All right, there you have it. Lifted the Mazda 6. Minimum clearance underneath now is approaching 8 inches, 9 inches at the front, 10 inches at the back. Wheels are so much bigger that even with the lift, they fill the wheel well almost as much. So check that out. Should be ready to go just about anywhere and deal with snow or whatever else. I could have gone a little higher, but I didn't want to mess with the center balance too much and have to go too far backwards. So here, let's rewind and start from the beginning. All right, so let's start at the beginning. We're looking at about 5 3/4 inch clearance on the front. Out on the lip, it's closer to 7 inches. And then right behind the wheel, we're looking at about 6 inches of clearance. Now, if we go to the back, let's get a gauge. Even though there's not as much light, let's see where we're starting from. So again, we're looking at about 6 inches, maybe 5 3/4 if I look down the line at the lowest point under the car. And then behind it, we have start getting lots of clearance. I don't think that's an issue. It's 8 inches to start and then tapers up. So what tends to hook or be an issue from clearance is the long lip on the 6. So I'm gonna switch to those wheels over there, and then I'm gonna show you guys a little more detail of what's going on with the suspension, and then what I'm gonna tweak. All right, so I think I've got everything settled in the back. So I adjusted the perch for the spring by about a 1/2 inch on either side, make sure it's even, and then adjusted the shock body to be what's appropriate. Now let me try to show you under here, even though it's a little dark. Let's see here. So let's see if we can see that. So this up here is the rear sway bar, and then I unhooked the end link and then zip tied it on. It turns out that one of the end links was totally loose, and that's part of what my clunking was. For right now, I'm just zip tying it out of the way while I see what it's like to go a little higher altitude. So that's the gist of it, and then I did the same thing on both sides. So next step is I'll get the rear wheels on, and then I'll do the front. The front should be much simpler. The sway bar's already unhooked, so we'll see what this is like. All right, time for another update. Got everything dialed in on the front, adjusted the shock body to be a 1/2 inch longer. That's what I'm doing all around, is just a 1/2 inch higher. And then call attention to the front sway bar has already been disconnected. Been running like that for quite a while. Now, for those that aren't familiar, I'm actually using these adjustable size bushings. They're speedthane bushings that are a progressive spring rate. So I just was doing some fine tuning, but effectively what it means is I'm running 6K springs, but I only have about a 1/2 inch of travel before I engage these bushings, and these bushings start quickly ramping up the effective spring rate. So it allows me to have the front sway bar disconnected for maximum grip because I have no limited slip, while the bushings progressive spring rate limits the total amount of travel, so it still handles really well at high speed and stuff. So all I had to do in the front is just unthread this a 1/2 inch longer. So I'm gonna put the winter wheel on and do the other side, and then we'll be ready to see what it looks like and go for a drive. All right, just got back from a little test drive. It feels way different, I gotta say. So I was gonna let's get some after measurements to try and quantify what kind of difference. So roughly speaking, I put a 1/2 inch of height into the spring perches, front and back. And then the cross climate 2s that I'm running are 235/60 by 17. Whereas for perspective, my summer tires are a 245/45/17. So it's about a 2.5 inch total diameter difference, which means just from wheels, I get about 1.25 inches of lift, plus what I changed with the suspension. So roughly, I'm at about 7.5 inches in front of the wheel. At the lip, I've got about 9 inches of clearance where it was 7 inches before. I'm seeing a theme. Sure enough, the lowest point behind the wheel that I can see is 8 inches off the ground. And I'm gonna need to make this longer to measure. All right, in the rear, we're looking at, again, a full 8 inches of clearance, even the lowest point of the car. And then behind gets really high. I think it's 10 inches. Yeah, it's about 10 inches. So if we consult my really advanced, refined mechanism for tracking all of this, what we resulted in is a 2-inch lift. So a bunch of measurements just to try to quantify. It turns out things were more even than I thought. I thought I'd have to do the two sides more differently. But yeah, the net result is I gained 2 inches of clearance. Now it feels pretty different because I have the rear sway bar disconnected. I already was running with the front sway bar disconnected, but I did shrink the bushing a little. So it definitely feels a little softer. I also identified where some clunking was coming from in the back. So it's good to isolate that. And so this is just kind of a fun experiment. So overall, basically the root level is the lowest point of the car went from being about 5 3/4 inches, close to 6, to being close to 8 inches off the ground. It doesn't look hugely different especially because the wheel diameter is so much larger. So it actually fills in the wheel well just as much, if not slightly more. So it's pretty neat. Here we go, out for a test drive, see how the lifted 6 feels. Well, thanks to the supercharger, I still have plenty of torque. Even though the wheels are oversized, it takes a little something off the top. Now, I definitely feel the fact that the rear sway bar is unhooked, and a little higher center of gravity and a little more sidewall. But honestly, I'm surprised that it doesn't feel worse than it does. I've taken some corners pretty firmly. It really doesn't feel that different. Now, in case anybody's wondering, this is my boost gauge here. So satisfying. So, yeah, it seems like a total success. Like I said, definitely a little more movement, a little more going on. Definitely feel the sway bar in the rear, but I'm definitely learning more about the setup. It also makes me think that when I rehook up the sway bar, I need to get some adjustable end links, because I think it was bound up too much. I think there's a little more motion in the back. There's too much now, but I think there's too little before. So I think I'm gonna learn from this experiment. Now, all that torque can still spin the wheels, but all right, well, lifted 6, ready for winter, could probably go on some trails. Basically 8 inches of clearance underneath, 9 inches in the front, 10 inches in the back. Gotta love it. Shouldn't be too hard to switch back to full race mode when I'm ready to hit the track again, but wow, that is fun. So, good times.